friends, my name is Stephanie Siete, and I'm the Public Information Officer for Community Bridges here in Mesa, Arizona. I've recorded a few videos in the past, and they've always been about different various drug trends. Today we're going to try to keep it to about 40-45 minutes talking about vaping. I think vaping made the news a lot last year when people were talking about this mysterious illness hitting their lungs, and I think it's very timely that we revisit it now that the conversation again is about respiratory illnesses, compromised immunity with COVID-19. So with that, I've made some updates to the talk. This message is important to everyone. However, I would say this talk is specifically focused on adult education because I am going to show some devices, some of the things for concealment, and how these different ends, electronic nicotine delivery systems, are hidden. It's not just the world of Juul anymore. I'll talk to you about Soren, puff bars, mods, as well as the new marijuana. So if that's intrigued you, if you never heard of some of those words, then that's the reason to tune in. So I'm gonna say goodbye here for a minute and show you some of the slides. I will give you also a lot of resources here in the end, and feel free to reference those for help because there's so much to learn and know about the ever-changing world of vaping. Let me exit the screen here and get into talking about where it all starts. So it's not just vaping. I would really like to connect the dots and talk about all of the different gateway drugs that our youth are starting with, everything from alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, prescription drugs. Vaping kind of falls into that nicotine or tobacco category. It's just a different device. I think my biggest point in understanding is the average age in this country to start using is still 12.5, and it's not just the alcohol. Like I said, it's not cigarettes. They've been on the decline over the years. We'll talk about all the different forms of marijuana, how we've gone from smoking it to edibles to vaping it. It's legal here, it's illegal there, it's recreational, it's medicinal. I'll clarify all of that. And then the prescription drugs, we know a lot of that comes from our home, and we're living in a world where people are dealing with severe isolation and depression. And prescription drugs are just prevalent and definitely on the rise at this point. But let's put this all together, talking about vaping and how this quote unquote mysterious illness really isn't that mysterious, because again, it's all about particles and chemicals impacting our lungs, and we need to breathe. So when you look at someone like this, 25 years of age, they shouldn't be on ventilators in hospitals having assistance breathing. This is a very scary image. Again, timely, because we're hearing about people hospitalized due to COVID-19 on a ventilator. This is a visual that probably won't leave you. Everyone wants to breathe freely and on their own. So take note, this is a very young person. It doesn't take long to have damage, and we'll look at a few more photos here in a few moments. Another really important photo for adult education here is identifying that this cluttered desk really isn't just office supplies. You're seeing stuff that blends in, like Soren errors that look like highlighters, USB, it looks like a USB drive. The reality is those are your Juuls, and even the pens there are also products for vaping. Words just to take note of, and I'll try to use them in a sentence. One might take a hit or a rip from a Juul. The new Juul is puff bar because Juul now is limited with the ban on certain flavors. One might exhale a cloud of vape or a cloud from a mod. Mods are just bigger versions. They're modified. I'll show you pictures. Dripping, super dangerous that you can drip liquid nicotine into these different devices. Soren, some of these are just names. And I mentioned ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery systems. Do it for Juul, DI4J. We'll get into all of this. On the right side, this is going to be reference words towards new marijuana. People no longer just roll and smoke a joint. I think we're all aware of that. But take note of someone takes a dab of wax on a toothpick and chews it, right? It's known as goo. It's very concentrated oil. It's butter, shatter, juice, honey. It looks like honey. 710, it's not just 420 anymore. 710 is a new date and reference to marijuana. You write 710, flip it upside down, it spells oil. So these again are slang terms. I'm sure some of you are a little overwhelmed hearing this, but I promise I will connect the dots. It's not just an evolution of drugs, it's an evolution of devices when it comes to vaping. So we're going to look at all of these different products. The ones that are popular among our youth, the Juul are still out there. They only ban certain flavors. So the pods that you snap onto a Juul are still available. Soar and Air, again, sometimes look like a highlighter. It can look like a credit card. And many of these devices also look like pens that one could wear on their neck on a lanyard. So again, if you didn't hear me enunciate it correctly, ENDS, ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery systems. I'm going to show you some other acronyms here in a moment. But bottom line, this electronically delivers nicotine. And one of the biggest problems over the years is the misinformation that teens have gotten, thinking that these are safer products and that they don't contain nicotine. Mark my words, they do. And I'll show you some of the main chemicals associated and why this is so dangerous, because really you're just consuming nicotine in a liquid form, which is more potent, and you're taking in more. You're increasing the opportunity to get addicted quicker. It's very fast, very dangerous. Now, this is the part, again, I think is geared more towards adults, because kids are going to know this stuff. I want you to recognize that it's pretty, it's attractive, it's colorful. These devices, things that look like USB drives, highlighters, and pens, very small, very easy to pocket and hide. This one's frustrating because the ever popular iPhone watches, the Apple watches, what I meant to say, I mean, you'll see, Juul looks like it's packaged in an iPhone. So again, you go to a watch like this that's trendy and popular with Apple, you can see how the little pod is where you would put your liquid and click it into the watch. So why would anyone question that if they didn't even know what to look for? Old school, if you ask me, but some of the lipstick containers, again, things you can throw in a bag that might get overlooked, can also be a vaping device. In this case, you have inhalers. This is a little frustrating because this is an item that's a necessity for some individuals, that they're basically telling you, you can conceal this one, put your oil in there, put your nicotine, THC, what have you, in your puffet too, and no one's ever going to know anything different. It gives you very specific directions online how to do these things. Now, this next one might be a little shocking to some people, but it does exist. You can buy it online, and this isn't a joke. A vaping hoodie. You fill the liquid inside of the shirt, and then you can take basically those little like tassels and put them to your mouth and take a hit off your hoodie. So again, all of these things online, available. I think it's just important for parents to be in the know, be knowledgeable that this stuff exists so they know what to look for. Bigger picture concerns and thoughts, though, again, teens are starting to know the danger of vaping in general, but a lot of the time they were misled, misinformed, and thought it didn't contain nicotine. They thought the flavoring was safe. There are thousands of flavors out there, and some are more potent than others. Yeah, obviously, we've talked about different lung diseases, and I'm going to go over aerosolization with you. I know it sounds like a bigger word. I think that's why we say vape, because it's easier, but really this is all about aerosol, huffing, poisoning the lungs with things like, that don't sound dangerous, water, flavor, and then you get into the nicotine and propylene glycol, and people question what that is. Okay, these are your main chemicals. There are many more beyond this, but you have your water, your flavor for enticement, your nicotine for addiction, and your propylene glycol, let's just say PG, for your visual effect. Nasty, cancerous chemical, but it does the job of giving off that visual. So keep in mind, you put this all together, you heat all these products. It's very dangerous oil that it's found in. We'll get into in-depth conversation in a moment. But the flavor is what's really concerning to me, because it entices people to want to try this highly potent nicotine. I'm good at doing summaries on this. So as opposed to reading to you guys, I'll just highlight the red here. I mean, battery operated. This stuff heats up, it can blow up. It does turn nicotine and other chemicals into a vapor. It tells you right away you can utilize other chemicals. A moment ago, I mentioned aerosol. So if you were to identify like the whole huffing phase, with the anything for paints, glues, markers, white dots, aerosol sprays, things in the house, right? People sniff it, they inhale it, and huff it, right? If even just thinking and hearing me do that, visualizing how quickly they inhale these chemicals into their lungs. Now, tiny particles can get trapped in the lower lobes of our lungs, and that is an area where it's cancer that's inoperable. So these tiny chemicals, heavy metals such as nickel, tin, lead, cancer-causing chemicals can get trapped inside of our lungs. So again, this is not something that we light and create a smoke. We use a battery to heat oil, to inhale vape or a mist, if you will. So I really want you just to kind of digest how this all works. And really the process is just as dangerous. It's completely separate from the chemicals. Chemical injury is separate from just the behavior. What I mean is, when you look at some of the different testing that's been done, there was testing done in Scottsdale, Arizona at Mayo Clinic on, they did 17 lung biopsies and basically found the damage done to these lungs looked like they'd been exposed to toxic fumes or poisonous gases. It was very extreme. One thing I've tried to point out to people over the career that I've had, and I did start doing tobacco education way early, and I would just talk about common sense, like burning paper, inhaling smoke into your lungs. That's not a healthy behavior to do. Well, neither is burning oil, letting it become, hot enough to be a mist or a vape, and then inhaling it into your lungs where it has to cool or re-solidify and potentially burning your lungs. So what does it look like? It almost looked like the flu, but again, it's so interesting to talk about because real life, right? COVID-19 came along, it looked like any other virus or flu thing. And here I am referencing vaping signs and symptoms: shortness of breath, you get sick, you might throw up, vomiting, nauseous, fever, and fatigue. These symptoms can look like so many different things. The problem is people don't address it immediately. They don't take it seriously. They don't know what to do. So this was a concern last summer. And as we approach 2020 summer, we're still dealing with damage to our respiration, concerns about some of these symptoms here, but in a different capacity. So I've said it, and I'm just really trying to convey it. I'm going to say it again. It really doesn't matter what the oil, right? Someone can vape nicotine, THC. I'll show you an instance where someone vaped fentanyl. I pause because I think most people know that a pill could be contaminated with anything, right? Pills can be deceiving. You just don't know what you're getting nowadays. It's not like, all drugs are snorted or injected. Now it could be pill version. Well, any drug can also be liquefied. So you take any one of these liquids. Again, you want it to be hot enough to be created into a mist or a vape so that you can inhale it. On average, that is 400 to 450 degree temperatures to get it to mistify so you can inhale it. When it re-solidifies in the lungs, it can burn them, it can do damage. So we've heard about all these different types of chemicals. I really just want to do the common sense talk, like I said. Smoke inhalation is not healthy. Burnt oils inhaled into the lungs is not healthy either. This is just a quick visual of how a year ago, not even, we were going, okay, wait a minute, someone died, and it made news because one person's death was tied to vaping. But I'll tell you right now, it jumped quickly. We were all over the place identifying that, wait a minute, there's other teams in other states. There's been other concerns, other reports. And the way it all worked was each state started paying attention to, well, wait a minute, they said something here. We had a case like that. What do you think it was? And all of a sudden, everyone starts talking and the numbers jump. 25 states, 225 people, 500 individuals, 8 deaths, 1,600 cases. I'm not sure where anyone is more watching this from. It might be outside of Arizona, but here in AZ, it is what it is, right? You take note of stuff that is local to you. People paid attention when a high school teenager, a 17-year-old girl, a junior in high school, was hospitalized on ventilators from vaping. This was a common report all around the country. My career started out doing tobacco education, and I would still say to this day that long-term smoking, you take your chance. It increases your risks of damage like emphysema, cancer later in life. Long-term smoking, 30, 40, 50 years in some cases. But what we saw with vaping is that these individuals were hospitalized within a year or two or a few from utilizing electronic nicotine delivery systems. This one grabbed headlines because it was a teenage athlete that was facing certain death, right? Like his lungs had no movement. He ended up with a double lung transplant because there was no airflow in his lungs, and the surgeons had never seen anything like it. And they, again, said he has to have this surgery or he will die. You go from being a young, healthy athlete running. I mean, this kid, his story's been told. He's going around sharing his information now. He's like, I vaped for less than a year. He knew school was starting, so he didn't want to vape anymore because he wanted to make sure he was healthy enough to run. So he stopped using in August when school started. He got sick in September. And as you can see in the highlighted area over here, he was having surgery in October. He spent 29 days on life support as a 16-year-old kid. I think he was 17 when he had the surgery, but either way, 16, 17 years old, getting new lungs, taking 20 pills a day to recover. This is a photo of his chest and all the stitches. And it's not like they just pop in 2 new lungs and you go about the rest of your life. He is one of these individuals that now has a compromised immune system. He's alive now, but what other issues will he face? Rewind a year ago, nobody could have predicted that we'd be where we are at this moment, worried about our breathing. And again, this poor kid, this didn't have to happen. Didn't have to happen. So this is just really new news. And again, trying to tie it to what's going on in our world. So it might look a little dated, but it is 2020 data, that says as of February 18th, there's been over 2,800 hospitalizations with the vaping, and I'll explain EVALI, I guess it's EVALI. I'll explain that here in a second. And maybe there's new data, but as of February 18th, we've also seen 68 deaths tied to this. So I told you there'd be a lot of acronyms. E-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury is where they come up with this acronym. Again, it was very concerning, and then all of a sudden our priorities shifted when we started talking about other things hurting respiration. This is still a concern and a problem. I just sadly think it was put on the back burner, and I hope those of you tuning in will make this a priority and just keep the conversation going, perhaps at dinner or any other family time. Bottom line, we don't know all of the answers. There's a lot of uncertainty about this whole coronavirus, but we do know it attacks the lungs. And I think that's an underlying message in the talk that I'm having with you right now. Again, I'm not a clinician. I'm not even a counselor. I'm an educator. So I try to keep this in very basic prevention education terms. But I remember in school talking about the cilia in our lungs, learning about these tiny hair-like structures that basically protect us, right? They keep the debris from entering our lungs. They keep out any kind of virus, or they try to fight it off. Well, here's the thing. If you're smoking or you're vaping, you're burning the cilia. You're breaking them down so that they can't work to fight any virus or bacteria getting into your lungs. So you want to be healthy. I never want to be the one that tells people what to do. I want to give them information. But to me, common sense is do whatever you can to keep your lungs healthy, to keep your breathing going. Things that we've heard just recently, and again, keep attributing this to common sense, tying smoke and vape to our lungs and connecting it to COVID-19. We know that smoking damages the lungs' defense mechanisms, right? It's going to make it harder for an individual to fight off COVID-19 and any kind of respiratory disease or illness. We know COVID-19's main target is the lungs, and injured lungs have trouble fighting off this coronavirus or any respiratory disease for that matter. Vaping has all the same adverse effects as smoking does. And again, this is always going to be a conversation point. I've found this in my career. I know pro people who are using certain chemicals and products always have their argument, but to me, it always, again, comes back to staying healthy. So we know smoking over time can damage our breathing, and professionals are saying, medical officials are saying that vaping has the same kind of effects that the smoking does. So smoking or vaping can really irritate the lining of our lungs, and just keep that in mind. I think we did a phenomenal job at driving down smoking rates in this country. We didn't want kids starting, because the thing is, you start, early, you're more likely you're going to keep doing it in your adulthood. So we didn't want them to start to begin with, and we did a good job. We saw a decline in smoking rates, but then along came vaping, and it skyrocketed. I'll be honest, we have kids as early as 10 and 11 years old doing this stuff. A lot of the times we've seen cases where the high school kids are selling to the middle school kids. And then maybe the middle school kids have little brothers and sisters who are curious, or they share it with them. That's just the way it happens. I mean, we saw a jump from 3.6 million to 5 million teen vapors in the US in 2019. I'm not really sure what the current data is, as we haven't seen the reports. Obviously, again, our focus has shifted in this country. Quick few visuals, again, for adults. I mean, this is relevant for kids too, because it really shows how a kid is marketed. They teach us, they start marketing us very, very early. And this is why feds in 2018 wanted to crack down on the packaging, because they were making it very similar to kid-like products. And that industry was like, no, we're not. So you guys tell me, if when we look at these next 3 pictures here, if you see any similarities here and how this could mislead a child. You've got Sour Patch Kids, candies, and e-liquids. See any similarities? I mean, it's a rhetorical question, right? We know. Unicorns are popular. You have your candy, and then your liquid nicotine over here, which we haven't even explained thoroughly yet. This one should be frustrating for everybody to see that these juice boxes look just like nicotine. And it's not just a risk for the user, it's anyone that's around that's curious that might try this stuff. So I keep talking about dripping. I want everyone to look at the upper right-hand corner and see those little, almost eyedropper size containers, the apple flavors, the other sweet strawberry flavors, vanilla, what have you. Look at the picture in the middle. This is where you take your liquid nicotine and drip it into your product. And I'm going to show you the hole on some of these products. It's the size of a nail head. So what if you're dripping this stuff and you miss, you spill, it seeps down the side, it gets on your fingers. Again, I can't believe I'm saying this right now, but I've said this for a decade plus. People have user error. They spill it, it seeps into their hands. They need to wash their hands, right? How many times have you heard that one lately? But the thing is, you say you don't wash your hands, right? You've got this on your fingers, and you pick up food. We've already seen that, how quickly things cross-contaminate. You pick up food, you don't pick up food, you rub your eyes. You touch your face. You wipe your nose. I'm telling you right now, this would be such a burning sensation to get into your eyes, or it could be poisonous just to swallow it. And now it's happening because you didn't wash your hands. The dripping, again, it's tiny little droplets. They make it look fun and flavorful. Sorry if any of these photos are offensive, but I also want you to understand how popular this is with a very young crowd. And as here I am doing a training video for you virtually, young people were always trying to capture exciting videos. And vapes is one of the ways that they're doing it. This is so concerning. I mean, most people look now at the gummies and they think about marijuana edibles, not just the candies, but even nicotine played on this and tried to make liquids with different gummy flavors to make it appealing to our younger people. So again, a lot of the products look misleading, confusing, or why wouldn't a child try it, right? You're going to hear a lot of, again, terminology, things like nic salt. Nicotine salt, it's basically more purified from the tobacco leaves. It's very potent. So you're going to see this also in your different vapes, but again, very pretty looking. My concern is this. This picture, we're going to leave here for a moment, is my standout photo because it reminds us about how many other people can be poisoned. I'll give the example, right? A kid has a vape, a Juul, a Soren, and he's after school using it, or has it in his hand. And, oh my gosh, here comes a parent, an adult. He doesn't want to get caught with it, so he stuffs it in the couch cushion. But then he forgets about it. And along comes a child or a family pet who takes it out, puts it in their mouth. It's toxic, it's poisonous. It could potentially be fatal. The middle school kid who's got one of these vaping looking pens or USB drives, highlighter looking products in their backpack. They leave it on the floor. It smells good. There's over 7,000 flavors. Along comes again a toddler, a pet, smells the sweetness, opens the bag, takes out the product, puts it in their mouth. I'm setting the scenarios. These are the things I do talk to kids about. I would suggest you talk to them about that it's not just dangerous for the user. The ripple effect is how much danger it can have for an unsuspecting person or child in that case, right? AAPCC, American Association of Poison Control Centers. If you want to check that out at .org, go to their website. Really all I'm showing you here is how there's been a major increase in poisonings. So again, we're only a few months into 2020. They do a monthly update. So check their website if you want current data. You can see that last year in 2019, they had the most calls and cases ever reported. And as we know, not every call is reported. So maybe you heard that at one point, Juul was under fire at the very beginning of the year. They were saying, we're going to go after these companies, we're going to ban them. Well, they only instituted a partial ban. They shut down, as it says, most of the fruit mint flavored nicotine products. It doesn't say all, it says most of them. Kids are creative. There is a black market. You can figure out how to make this stuff on your own. It's amazing what's still out there, but they did try to institute a partial ban. I mentioned a little bit ago that to me, Juul packaging looks like an iPhone case. You can see it clear as day right there. It's slick, savvy, this little white box. Looks like, oh my gosh, you're buying your little electronic USB charger, and then you see these 4 little colors. These are pods. So you have a pod of nicotine that you clip into your Juul, and then you take a hit or a rip from the Juul. What's crazy is that one pod is equivalent to a pack of cigarettes nicotine. So hear me when I say that. Each pod is equivalent to a pack of cigarettes nicotine. So in your starter kit for under $40, you get 4 packs of cigarettes nicotine. Historically, when someone was done smoking, right, they ashed out, they threw the cigarette down, they were done with a cigarette. Now most people are done with a pod. So connect the dots. They're ingesting more nicotine than ever in history. It's cheap to buy, it's colorful, it's flavorful. This slide might be a little misleading because they're saying they've banned some, remember, some of the flavors. But I will tell you, in terms of underground production, a lot of people are creating even newer flavors out there. This is an industry that was soaring, made a lot of money really fast. You can see they were worth over $10 billion in their first year. I mean, it took, Facebook almost 4 years to do that. So I want you to understand the power behind an industry with billions of dollars. Former CEOs even said he wouldn't want his kids using this product, yet in 2018, 76% of the youth market was using them. He knew it was bad, but he probably made millions of dollars off the use of other youth. Again, very popular product. This is just imaging showing you that even their marketing initially was going after the kids with the colorful young the use of color and the use of young people in their pictures and making it look like it's a launch party. Come on out and grab your Juul. So again, it doesn't ban everything. I've said it enough. Continue to get educated, but really your Soarin' Airs can look like flat little credit cards. That red tab on the bottom is what you would open to drip your liquid nicotine into. Again, tiny mouth, the mouthpiece is tiny, but that tiny hole to put the nicotine in is where you could have the error and spill this. Say it 100 times, right? We've heard it that many already. Wash your hands. First of all, we wouldn't even want someone really getting into this, but for someone that's already doing it, maybe they hear me remind them, this is poison and you don't want to get this on your face, in your eyes. You don't want to ingest it, even if it looks pretty like that. So these are not banned. The mods are not banned. You basically unscrew the top there and you see the clear center. Those coils are going to heat up after you've dripped your nicotine in there. You put the top back on. This almost operates like a cell phone on the right. You've got your power button, and then you can up and down, like where volume would be, your wattage, your temperature. You can play around and manipulate it because you are modifying the mod. Puff bars is the new Juul. I mean, basically liquid-filled cartridge with a pen-sized stem. Kind of show it to you right here. Kind of looks like Juul, and it tells you that it's got all these other flavors. So they banned one, and then along comes a very similar product that they're familiar with. So these partial bans, if you ask me, are kind of a joke. It still leaves plenty available to youth and just anyone who's interested in it. But it's definitely been an industry that went after younger people. And I don't mean just teenagers, 20s and 30s. Yes, that's still very young. So this is also very recent news. The coronavirus outbreak has now delayed the FDA's review of vaping products. They were supposed to have all this material submitted by May 12th, but now it's been pushed back till September 9th because, again, we couldn't really plan and predict what happened with coronavirus. So I don't want people to forget about vaping, even though they've been given some more leeway. I think more than ever now we should be concerned about poisons and chemicals that hurt our breathing, and we should probably make better decisions about it so that we can have healthy lungs. All right, there's your warning, right? Graphic photos. Let's look at what happens when a lot of these devices heat up and blow up. In this case, you're seeing what a 16-year-old suffered when his vape device blew up. He suffered second-degree burns to his face. He was on a ventilator, needed assistance with his breathing, but I will tell you, he was considered lucky. Why? Lucky because he had his glasses on at the time of the incident. So I guess that they were saying the little particles that blew apart didn't go in his eyes because his glasses shielded his eyes. Whereas in this case, this individual in the bottom picture here suffered from temporary blindness when the device blew up in his face. All the little pieces went in his eyes. And again, I don't think we talk about that. We don't think about it. Hands blown apart, teeth, braces. This guy lost an eye. I know a couple of years ago, people were probably more concerned. I know it was a news story, right? When people were talking about lithium batteries blowing up in hoverboards, and these are at your feet. These products you're putting in your mouth, near your face. So it shouldn't be surprising to see individuals lose eyes, teeth, tongues. Again, I forewarned you that these were some graphic photos, but I think this is the stuff you learn about and you share. You share with your loved ones because you're trying to save their lives. I mean, when you have 17-year-old kids showing up to surgical centers and the surgeon thinks that it looks like a close-range gunshot, and they're like, no, this is from a vape explosion. These look like little bombs. And it is what it is. We haven't really gotten into depth about brain development, teenage brains, but we all know that you have to have a little bit of life experience in order to make good decisions. And if you're only 15, 17, that's all you have is 15 years of experience, 17 years of experience. So adults, don't be afraid to talk to our youth and be real and show them some of these stories. I know women, for the most part, would put everything in a bag, but if a guy has a cell phone, car keys, spare change, and a vape in his pocket, all it takes is them like clicking into each other, like rubbing into each other. And you can see here in this still shot, this vape device blew up in this guy's pant pocket at a gas station. He's lucky that he wasn't out by the pump. One of the worst places I could think of that you could have an explosion would be on an airplane. And here you have a vape pen exploded on a Delta flight. You think about some of these checked bags, high altitude pressure, it's really not surprising that they could potentially blow up. You know, maybe you're thinking you're doing this thing, being safe and storing it in the center console here in your car, and then all of a sudden it blows up. I know this isn't always the biggest news, but that's why I'm happy to share this information with you so you understand that even people have been killed by this. There was a young man out of Florida who was vaping. He actually died from a projectile wound to his head. When the device blew up with such force, it embedded into his head, into his skull, knocked him out, and he caught on fire and burnt 80% of his body. Again, that's a little graphic. I'll save you from any kind of photos, but I think it's important just to hear what happened when you're unconscious. You couldn't say stop. The fire continued and he burnt to death and died. I mean, and here's a young man, 24 years of age, where this severed an artery and he bled out and died as well. So there have been fatalities tied to this stuff, not just from the lungs, but in other instances. And I guess it's also important to note, because I think about when we charge batteries, most of you were thinking about your phone, we tend to charge them overnight. And when it looks at how to avoid vape battery explosions, they ask you not to charge the vape overnight. They don't want you charging it with anything else, any tablets, any phones, and they suggest you cover it up because this thing heats up so fast, there is a potential for it to blow up. But how many people actually know that or pay attention to it? So in conclusion, we don't know that this is safer. It's kind of the question, is it? It was pitched as a safer alternative to cigarettes. It was pitched as helping somebody stop smoking. Well, I can understand in a sense that where this product would come from, where it would come from if someone had been smoking for 40 years. But the backlash was 12 and 15 and 18-year-old kids picked it up and that was their first use. So we can't be afraid to talk about this. We really don't know a lot about it. I'm just trying to throw out there some basic facts, share common sense, get you thinking about this and talking about it, because some of the words, it's just misleading. Even to say medical marijuana, I'm not here to say that it doesn't exist. There are forms of marijuana, different chemicals that can have medicinal properties, but not all of them. So let's spend a few minutes here putting this all together, because it's not just about, again, the chemicals. We have to connect the chemicals to the devices. And I mentioned this earlier, that anything can really be used in those vapes or ends, including your BHO, another acronym, butane honey oil or hash oil. So the photos are pretty accurate, right? Like I said, dabs of wax, looks like honey butter. It's known as shattering concentrate. But if you're looking at this screen, I need all your full attention on the last point where it says 90%, up to 90% THC. THC is the psychoactive ingredient found in marijuana without it, you're not getting high. That is, in layman's terms, the psychoactive substance is what causes the high. I'm going to show you something that doesn't cause it, but this is where we are today in 2020, very potent. THC, when it is synthetically altered. Synthetic just means man-made or chemically altered. So when you get it into this oil form, that's what's happening, right? Back in the day, this is why people laugh and think, well, marijuana really didn't do anything to you. I'm not going to dispute that, because when you go back to having single-digit purity over the decades, it really did average 2, 3. I mean, even if you got up to 5% THC, there's a big difference between a single-digit potency level and 80, 90% today. It's a significant jump. Now, again, people are going to have so many different thoughts and opinions on this, but I really don't believe that anyone wants a child to start using marijuana. I really don't believe that they were like, hey, this is a goal, because we've seen a lot of this stuff being high potent, addictive qualities that can lead to other use. And I'll connect that all for you here in a moment, because again, I can't say it enough. THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, psychoactive ingredient. Without it, there's no high. Now I'm going to flip-flop some slides here because I want you to learn this one as well. CBD, cannabidiol. This is your non-psychoactive. There is no high. This is the one now, and I used to say when you walked into a store, but there's not, I guess there's still stores open, but every store had it, right? everywhere from a beauty supply store to a grocery store to a convenient mart, all were selling CBD. And a lot of people probably didn't even know what that was. But it's easier to sell a non-psychoactive substance than it is one that gets you high. So this one, it's got medicinal qualities. It can help reduce nausea and vomiting when going through therapies like your treatments like chemo, radiation. This stuff is great for helping reduce seizures. So if somebody were suffering from multiple seizures, gosh, even tens of 20s a day, that's not a great quality of life. If you were able to use CBD to reduce the seizures and live a better quality, I'm all for that. The question is THC beneficial? Because here's a graph I want to show you with the same people being looked at, the same studies over the years. It's a very specific study on THC, CBD comparisons, right? It's almost like a trivia question because it shows you THC movement, right? In that it's increased. It's become more potent over the years and CBD levels haven't moved. That's the trick trivia question is because they can't. There's no high associated with them. So if this is like one of the takeaways that you get is understanding the different types of chemicals, it's really not even doing a drug talk anymore. It's kind of doing a chemicals of concern conversation, right? Big concerns is we push all this, we have storefronts, we have dispensaries, but a lot of it is not regulated, right? I mean, the state feds, they're not touching this. Quality control is left up to our manufacturers, and that's very concerning because if the store knows it's not going to be regulated, why would they really test it or check it? American Association of Poison Control Center actually even considered CBD an emergent hazard due to the potential of mislabeling. And then recently, the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, just gonna spit that out, but JAMA, found that 70% of CBD products were mislabeled. So I think we don't know 100%. We really don't. I'm not trying to be, so far on one side versus the other. I'm really trying to explain basics that today's world, you never know what you're getting in chemicals that could be in liquids, pills, foods, powders. It really is rolling the dice and taking a chance. I understand the reason to try to regulate and sell it. I mean, drugs in general aren't successful without money and addiction. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. So I get it, but I'm just trying to do the briefer version here. So let me take a few more minutes of your time to keep this brief. I mentioned BHO. There's going to be a more lengthy process to this, but in short, it's not hard to manufacture this. This is why I wanted to share this with the adults, because I'm telling you right now, you could Google search and get 5 easy steps for manufacturing BHO. How to get it down from that leafy green into an oil. And it's such things as taking the leafy green, stuffing it into a glass tube, putting maybe like a coffee filter rubber band at the bottom, the sticks there to push it all down, and then letting that butane drip through the leafy green. So when it comes through the filter and you've got this butane soaked marijuana goo, the next thing you do is put it on a flame. But common sense says a lot of the times that can blow up. Now, given this is just a PowerPoint brief conversation, I don't really have the access to videos here, or actually maybe it will play. No, I lied, watch. Here's the thing, it's gonna show it to you in slow motion right now. What I'm really trying to demonstrate here is airflow. Something as simple as a door opening, change of airflow, a window opening. In this case, guy opens door, we've got the torch over here with the butane, and boom, the combination causes it to explode. Now what you're seeing here in slow motion is the guy's got flames on his head, he's going the wrong way, we've got the whole room collapsing, walls, ceilings. He's trying to get out of the room when that's him, stuck in the fireball before he actually exits the room. So severe burning, damage to a room. But let's look at maybe what it could look like outside. I always tell people, you got to think about your loved ones and where they're living and just talking to them, because we know heat rises. And in this case, you can see what happened to the unit above the lab. It's not just methamphetamine labs anymore. Got these BHO and marijuana labs. I don't think that enough people are talking about this. They think marijuana is no big deal. They think it's legal. I'm here to say legal has never meant safe, ever. Legal has never meant safe. I'm just trying to show you some of the risks, the environmental risks behind just the creation of this new oil. As if BHO weren't bad enough, then along comes a crystal form known as crystalline THC. It's not crystal meth. Again, I was clear that there's no right or wrong way to do drugs, and they can show up in any format. In this case, we have a crystal form of THC that is near 100% pure. One of my biggest concerns is now when you look at food-based products and edibles, how do you know if that was manufactured with crystalline, oil, leafy green, if it's made with THC or CBD? I guess you have to trust what the person that sold it to you says or what the label says. But a lot of times you see these in little baggies. You see these in like sticker, fake, I say fake labels because look at them. They're play on other products. There's a lot of consumer confusion. I think the error, the possible error is the little kids that put this stuff in their mouth. Again, I don't think people want children accidentally poisoning themselves. People laugh when they see some of these logos. It does sound funny, but I'm telling you right now, without that circle, many people don't even notice the Pop-Tart versus Pop-Tart. And again, is it really that funny if it goes into the mouth of a 5-year-old? So I keep talking about kids, but let's do a quick story about an adult. Upper right-hand corner, where you see Karma Candy, 101 milligrams of THC. That's a lot of THC in a tiny piece of candy. We haven't even talked about the serving size. Serving size isn't the whole product. I think we've all kind of learned that the hard way with food, right? In this case, I do know that Karma Candy's serving size was 2. So cut it in half. And a tiny little piece of caramel looking candy. So a 48-year-old man, husband and father of 3 boys in Denver, Colorado, the year it's legalized in 2014, it's like, all right, I'll follow directions. I'm in the safety of my own home. I bought it legally. I'm following the right serving size. I'm only going to have half. And in his eyes, it's like he's thinking I'm not at a bar where I'm drinking and then potentially driving home under the influence, right? So he thinks he's following all the rules. He eats half. His 44-year-old wife, Christine, calls 911. She says, my husband ate marijuana candy. I know it's legal and everything, but he's acting crazy. He's hallucinating. He's saying crazy things. He's seeing things. She's like, he broke a glass window in the house and he's crawling through the glass and he's talking about death and dying. She's like, is there anything you can do to help us? The dispatcher hears him talking about, death and dying. I'm telling you, the call ends 11 minutes in when he takes the family gun and shoots her in the head. Colorado dad pleads not guilty to shooting his wife dead in front of their 3 sons after hallucinating on pot candy. Dispatcher heard him talking about the end of the world. This is just one story, one example. This is one family who was destroyed. These 3 boys now grow up with no mom, because she's gone, and no dad, because dad got 30 years in prison. His brother couldn't believe it, said, no way would my church-going, loving brother do this. And they found that he was under the influence of high-potency THC. They were completely shocked that that's all that was in the system. But I think people need to understand we've come a long way. It's no longer, like I said, 2 and 3% potency. This is mind-altering substance, much more so than it's ever been in history. And I think you can apply that to most drugs nowadays, that they're more potent. So for decades, we keep saying mind-altering substance, more so than ever. I just don't know if it's worth the risk. I mean, when you see cases of like 19-year-old kids jumping to their deaths from balconies at hotels after eating cookies, 23-year-old kids shooting themselves in the head, no prior incidents, but 8 edibles. They're all different, unique outcomes, but none of these are good outcomes. So the last few things I just really want to put together, pull it all together, is way back then, Yes, single digit purity, 2 to 3% THC. We talked about 420, you rolled and you smoked a joint. But we live now where this stuff in a leafy green is 20 to 30% THC. It's more potent than 2 and 3%, right? But when you add the butane, when you cook it, you make it concentrated, the 710 quality, you're going to get this upwards of 90%. And then don't forget, there's also crystalline. So you see more violent outbursts, psychotic breaks. And I've had people argue with me, well, you don't overdose and die. That's not my only concern. I think the behaviors associated with one being under the influence of a synthetic substance like this. I mentioned at the very beginning that fentanyl was also something that was concerning. I'll do a whole nother video on that one at another time, but that drug is potent, it is deadly. You could use it once and die. And there's even been cases of people vaping fentanyl. I guess I'll say it again, you never really know what you're getting in powder, liquid, pill form. I think people really just need to be cautious and careful. You know, even if they choose to go down the path of vaping, it's hard to quit. I mean, a lot of experts don't really even know how to quit it because it's kind of this funny question of asking, how do you quit the product that was supposed to help you quit? Knowing that it's more potent than it's ever been, that vapes can contain nicotine, THC, it can be both, it could be anything. I just mentioned fentanyl. The sweet flavors. I mean, I don't think I emphasized this enough. But back in the day when one smoked tobacco, we knew it, right? Like you don't even have to turn around. It's got one distinct smell and it was pretty nasty. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful about it, but it just didn't smell great. Like you knew the smell of tobacco. Well, if you have 7,000 flavors that are Oreos and ice cream and mangoes and sweet tarts, they're more enticing. You're going to get more users behind it. They're sweet, they smell good, they don't smell bad. They're being used much more frequently. Even on that note, with a kid, when we were in school, right? We knew kids were vaping in schools. No one was ever smoking in schools. I mean, and if they did, they got in trouble. It was an obvious thing. You didn't take out a cigarette in front of a teacher because you couldn't do it. But when people were taking hits off vapes, they were exhaling the product into backpacks and shirts. It was much easier to conceal. So again, it's a whole new pattern of use. They're doing it more frequently. Keep that in mind. We talked about the 200 puffs per pod, one pod being equivalent to a pack of cigarettes, and then you have 4 pods in a starter kit. You add that all up, they're using it more frequently because it smells good, because it's more potent, and you're going to see addiction take place much faster. It's probably not what you wanted to hear, but it's the straight truth of understanding that nicotine dependence can occur in a teenager. This is why we want to delay onset of chemicals, because that brain is still developing, that body's still developing, and we need just to keep it healthy for as long as we can. I think I've beat this to death enough that we know how potent it is. We do know that it's going to be hard to quit, that a lot of the times when one is trying to stop use of nicotine-based products, history tells us they're going to go through withdrawals, they're irritable, they're headaches. Depression is one of the words I focus on because more than ever, we're dealing with depression at a higher rate. So I don't know if people are trying to do this more to cope or if they're not doing it because, again, they realize how damaging it is to their lungs. Either way, don't be afraid to talk to people about it. Get them help. There's professionals out there that you can talk to, your doctors. There's life coaches. There's everything. There's a lot of people that are willing to try to help. Again, I'm not a clinician, but I'm here trying to get the information out as best I can as well. To me, common sense, staying hydrated, getting your sleep. We keep even hearing that now in a COVID-19 world. All of this is healthy messaging that we should try to live by, right? Eating cleaner, checking in, getting love and support from friends and family, not isolating too much. I mean, I know we're living in more of an isolated world, but I keep reminding people to utilize the phone, text, talk, FaceTime. And you can also get that kind of support in a situation like this when you're asking for help. So again, I think in summary, don't give up. Like you're worth it. We're all worth it. I don't know how many times I can say that our lives matter. It's not hashtag this life and that life. It's hashtag all lives matter. So do the best you can and utilize any type of support that's necessary. It really kind of ties to all the old school thinking with nicotine, everything from hypnosis and medications, the whole lozenges, patches, and gums. Those are some of the things, devices that they suggest. There are websites like smokefree.gov, and you can see they break it down for teens, women. There's English, there's Spanish, there's senior programs, there's veteran programs, all on this website. I'm going to skip some of this because really you'll find it all when you go to the website. If you're in Arizona, they still have the smokers helpline, which is free to call and talk to a quit coach, which is very important. And this nationally used guide, this vaping guide is available for free. Sure, you can Google Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. You can look it up right here at drugfree.org, but bottom line, just Google drugfree.org and vaping guide, and you'll get a free 18-page booklet that shows you what it is, how to talk to kids, and really, I will say, clearly a summary of everything I've shared with you today. Utilize technology, the Truth Initiative. You can text messages. They've got some great commercials and campaigns trying to help people quit. Smokefree.gov did the same thing. You can text QUIT to 47848 and get healthy messaging to get you through your days. So I say it all the time, no matter what the topic is, and I promise you, anyone that knows me knows I was saying this long before COVID-19, but life is truly a precious gift, and we do need to spend our time wisely. You know, I've never wanted to do any of my trainings to kill time. I'm big on not wasting it, right? Because it's limited. And I've always tried to remind people that time is limited on this earth. Spend it with people that matter. Spend it just wisely in general. You know, when I do a 45-minute hour talk, what have you, it's to fill you with new information to make better life decisions and choices. So hopefully you've learned something new. Usually I ask people to raise their hand, right? Hey, raise your hand, you learned something new. And then I take a picture. I don't know, maybe I'll figure out how to do that next time. But here are some resources. We've talked about some heavy topics. There's a lot of helplines that are out there. You can always Google it. You can always go back to this website. In the future, this is me. This is me currently too, not just in the future. What I was going to say is in the future, I hope to keep doing these presentations live, but if not, I'll get more comfortable doing videos. I'm at communitybridgesaz.org. You can email me. We are also available locally 24/7 to help people. That's really what we're in the business of doing, is saving lives, right? Like, we really want people to know that your lives matter. So hopefully you learned something new today. Hopefully you'll be prepared, a little bit more prepared to talk to your kids and talk to anyone that matters, because all lives matter. So again, thank you for tuning in, and we will be talking in the future about some other drugs later. Take care. Thank you.